This episode of the podcast is brought to you, as always, by Rakesh Joshi Law PLLC in Albany, New York. Attorney Rakesh Joshi is an accomplished trial attorney and has been admitted to practice before the United States Supreme Court. He is also a licensed patent and trademark attorney with the USPTO. Contact him if you have a serious case in New York State, or if you need to patent an idea that you have, or enforce a trademark or copyright in any of the 50 U.S. states or our territories, and actually internationally as well. You can call him at 518-635-0725 or visit his website to learn more and send an email at rakeshjoshilaw.com. On today's episode, we talk about COVID-19 and how it compares to H1N1 and the common flu or influenza. We critique some of the responses that some of the popular media figures have had to school closures and quarantines, including Steve Hilton and Fareed Zakaria from CNN. We go over... That's all at about 15 minutes in. We talk about Mayor Bill de Blasio's recent decision to close schools and his reaction. We also we discuss Italy, Spain, and Europe, their coronavirus stats and how Italy has such a high mortality rate. We look into some of the confusion, or we discuss some of the confusion people have about those numbers. Discrepancy between Italy and South Korea. That's at about 26 minutes in. At 29 minutes in, we talk about the South Korea model, how they're testing so many people and how they have a lower mortality rate at 2 to 3%, I believe. How the U.S. is prepping to follow that. There's a lot of talk about President Trump's his comments about a website that Google's making. And so we talk about that and how that's what the U.S. is doing to replicate the South Korean model, but our style or at a larger scale. So we discuss that. We discuss also the record and some of the complaints that have been lobbied in the media about the CDC kits, about the failed, quote, CDC kits. We give insight into those and a lot more issues. The CDC kits are at about an hour in. Hope you enjoy the show.
That we don't know if that's really going to help. And I was talking to some of my friends today, and they said, well, I hope you're right. And I said, yeah, I am right, because it's logical. That's exactly how this virus is going to behave. And it cannot survive when the temperatures are higher and the humidity is high as well. So
I've heard that too, and there was something I was reading. Let's see if I could find it. It was a small study. Let's see.
Where was the study?
Papers. This is SSRN.com. I don't know who that is. SSRN. Let's find out. SSRN. SSRN. I don't know. SSRN.com, devoted to rapid worldwide dissemination research and blah blah. Who knows? But anyway, supposed study.
Now, at the same time, I really don't want to mislead people. If anybody is listening, this seems like a signal sent out in outer space, right? Anything you do on the internet, you don't know how many people are going to listen. So I don't want to mislead people. And what I mean by that is, yes, summer is going to help. Higher temperatures are going to help. all it helps is in the range, in time and space. As in right now, if you leave an infected specimen, an object, it's going to survive longer, right? When the temperatures are higher, it's not going to survive that long. So it doesn't mean you can't transmit. Of course, you can still transmit, but its survival outside the body is going to just keep dwindling. And even within the body, because the temperatures of our bodies are also going to rise with the rise in outside temperature. That's why we sweat. The body is hotter, so the body wants to cool down, so we start sweating in summer or in higher temperatures. So that's what I mean. It's not that it's absolutely going to stop all transmission. Yeah, if you're going to get so close that you're literally spitting in the other person's face, the other person stands a chance of being infected. So that we got. Yeah, go ahead.
Here's what it is: the ssrn.com. It's not the source of the study that was published. It's just an aggregator of published studies, and this is from posted March 10th. It looks like 4 people from Chinese universities on this. It says high temperature and high humidity reduce the transmission of COVID-19. The abstract talks about how each 1 degree of ambient temperature decreases the R value, right, of transmission by XYZ. But let's see, we find under a linear regression framework for 100 Chinese cities, high temperature and high relative humidity significantly reduced the transmission of COVID-19, even after controlling for population density and per capita, blah, blah, blah. This result is consistent with the fact that the high temperature and high humidity significantly reduce the transmission of influenza. Like you were saying before, right, that's why we don't have flu during the summer.
Yeah.
It indicates that the arrival of summer and rainy season in the Northern Hemisphere can effectively reduce the transmission of the COVID-19. So hopefully that's true, right. Because remember, one point I heard someone else saying was that just because of all the unknowns, that's why everybody's, that's the scary part, all the unknowns, right?
Right.
But somebody was saying that, like, that MERS, MERS, right, the Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome related to SARS and all of that stuff, they were like, well, that's not the case with MERS that the heat does anything, right? They're like, it lives perfectly fine in the high heat areas. So I'm again, we don't know. I'm just saying that's a counterpoint or something to think about. But like you said, influenza seems to die in the heat, and these Chinese people seem to say that these Chinese I'm sure Chinese PhDs, whatever, in this study, seem to say the same thing.
Yeah, the reason being, when it rains and then it gets hot, you have relative rise in humidity, and the humidity disrupts these viruses are basically just RNA, ribonucleic acid, right? And it's got some kind of sheet on it, and that's about it. It's got a protein plus lipid, like a fat plus protein sheet on it, and there's some RNA, nucleic protein inside it. That's about it. And how it replicates it, just to keep it very short, the virus is attached to other cells. They enter the cells. The RNA enters the cell, uses the DNA material to form more similar copies. So it literally replicates. It does not reproduce like other organisms. It doesn't have meiosis or mitosis or those kind of reproductive ways of Those are the vegetative forms of reproduction. It doesn't do that, the reduction or equal bifurcation of a cell. It doesn't do that. It just replicates itself. And then you have more viruses and it keeps attacking. And then the body has a response to this, and that fight is what we call as an infection and response to the infection. And that's how people's lungs get damaged and flooded, and you have all these responses, coughing, and so that's how that goes. As far as going back to 2 weeks, okay, good news, they have finally decided to suspend all school activities until, I think, April 1st in New York?
In New York, right? Yeah, different states
are
doing different things, right?
Yeah, New York schools closed until...
Now, most places I've seen, a lot of places, a lot of states, they're shutting them down, or they're telling kids they're extending spring break, or they're telling people, hey, we're remote for the rest of the semester. It seems like to me most school systems are just going to say, like, see you in the fall, don't bother coming back, or where they can do remote, they'll do remote. But
yes, and until Saturday, the mayor of New York, de Blasio, he said, I'm not going to shut down these schools. I'm not going to close schools. I care about their education and all that. He was just being weird. I don't get it. And then Sunday suddenly has a change of heart, and he's going to close the schools in New York City. I don't get the motivation behind all this. Did he want to make news? I don't know. Okay, so now it seems de Blasio said at a media briefing that there will be no school until April 20th. April 20th. Okay. So that's good. Now, I just want to dispel some people on Fox News and CNN just 2 weeks ago were almost calling it an overreaction and a hoax. Right, an overreaction to this whole thing. And everybody's changed their tune now, and somehow now they are in tune with us. They say, oh yeah, they're doing the right thing, they're closing everything. And then, have you heard of this guy, Steve Hilton? He has some show on Fox News, and I read in the news that he has a question as to, what's that?
I think he sounds familiar.
Yeah, Steve Hilton. He's a bald guy. I think he's British.
Oh, yeah. He's got he does little, he's had some interesting stuff I've seen. The only time I've seen it, though, I think the clips on YouTube.
Right. So, yeah, that's what I saw on YouTube as well. I don't know how it came on my feed, but he has a very unique question. So he thinks. His question is, if kids are not coming down with any symptoms of coronavirus, what's the use of shutting down schools and affecting their education? He also goes on to say that, perhaps they have a good reason, but I don't know what the reason is. Maybe they'll tell me. So let's help Mr. Hilton here. Mr. Hilton, the reason they are closing the schools down is, even though the kids maybe until now, we're not really seeing any symptoms in them, and the doctors are not seeing signs in them, does not mean that they're not infected. They're probably not affected very adversely by it, but they will still be carriers, and they will help in communicating this disease to other people. And they are very efficient vectors. That's why they always fall sick, and they take these sicknesses to their families. So that's the issue. That's why we're doing this. So maybe this will help Mr. Hilton. If you know him, just let him know what the real reason is, why we're stopping this. These are vectors, right? Children are vectors.
he made that point recently, or what? That like, hey, why are we shutting
just
down
yesterday.
schools?
Yeah, he's made this point just yesterday. Yeah, he's very confused that the schools are closed. So the schools were closed today. So I guess he made the point either last night or today. So I'm sure a lot of his listeners have this doubt, and they're wondering why kids are being stopped from going to school, because kids are efficient vectors. They're not going to wash their hands very well. They're going to sneeze in each other's faces, just exactly what I said before. Everybody knows this about kids. That's why we take care of them. That's why we have to monitor them. Hey, wash your hands before you eat this. Don't eat that mud. Don't jump in the muddy puddle, or those kind of things. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, right. And then they're always congregating.
And they're congregating. They love to pile on each other, hug each other, talk to each other, fight with each other. They do all this. It's absolutely natural. And if one kid gets in our class, guess what? Within a day, he will infect everybody else. And that's why they pick noses. They wipe their noses in different places where they're not supposed to, or maybe they're supposed to, they think. They hold hands. There you go. So that's the reason. And that's why I suggested 2 weeks ago that schools, colleges, close these things. The alternative is online education. The technology is available. If you cannot figure out how to do it, contact Mr. Chase Billow. He will tell you exactly how to get this done.
Yeah, it's not difficult.
I'm sure you will volunteer to the government and tell them how to get these classes run, right? Online. Yeah. So maybe they should contact you for this. Another constant talk about and comparison to H1N1. Constant. And it's on all these major networks, Fox News pundits, opinion pundits, whatever you call them, CNN pundits. All these people keep comparing it to H1N1 and how it is, it kills so many people and so many people are infected. Here we barely have anything. So maybe instead of giving them opinions, they might appreciate some numbers. H1N1, yes, it did affect 57 million people in America. Okay? It did kill 11,690 people. That was over the in a year, 1.5 years. Yes. Not instantly, but yes.
Right.
And guess what the percentage is? 0.02% death rate. 0.02. Now, let's put those numbers in perspective. What does that mean? That means for every 1,000 people. Why do I use 1,000? I think, on an average, an American person knows about 700 to 1,000 people. Nowadays, because of Facebook, this messenger, that messenger, you kind of know these people. Some people you also know just by watching their videos, right? Just on YouTube. So you know about 1,000 people. Every 1,000 people, it's 0.2. That means in every 10,000 people. So if you brought 10 people together and said, hey, do you know anybody who died of H1N1? They're going to, out of 10 people, and they will know 10,000 people, maybe 10 people will say, yeah, collectively we know 2 people. So out of 1,000, it's 0.2. It's not even one whole person out of 1,000 people. So generally speaking, many people,
they don't know anybody who died from it, right?
Will not
I don't know anybody who died from it. Right?
Correct.
I don't know anybody. But that too, that's something that I remember thinking about when this first came up, like, okay, H1N1, and I remember looking at that and seeing those numbers and being kind of shocked at how many people died from it, because I don't even remember it, Like, I remember it was a big deal.
I'm not taking that away. Yes, one death is too many for any disease, right?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, like, in the collective memory, now in 2020, people remember what H1N1 was, right? But we didn't shut down the economy. No one I don't remember them, like, banning schools. You know what I mean? I don't remember it being
no, they did not.
A giant deal. There was a vaccine thing.
They did not.
Right.
They did declare an emergency, by the way. Obama government did declare an emergency in 2009. Yes, they did. However, they didn't shut down. Yeah, they didn't shut down. I read up on it. They did not shut down much because the transmission and the death rate, the mortality rate was very, very low.
Yeah.
Now, let's put that in contrast, right? Because it's no use talking about that if we don't talk about the present virus, COVID-19. Because all these people keep bringing up the H1N1 and the regular flu. And somehow it feels like, especially, and I really don't want to start pointing fingers because that's really not an agenda of mine. But these guys are, like Hannity, every time he talks about it, he keeps talking about these large numbers of 500,000 dead and 10,000 dead and 11,000 dead. On CNN, these guys, they keep talking about that. And I'm sure they have their reasons. I'm not pointing fingers I'm not saying they're making a mistake. They are stating facts. But I feel like somehow the message that some people are getting is in contrast, hey, we haven't lost so many people. We haven't got so many infected yet. So guess what? It's probably not serious. And I heard that on Joe Rogan. You heard it on Joe Rogan podcast too. What's his name? Brian Callen saying, hey, how come we didn't hear all this when it was H1N1? Like, how come? So why are they talking so much about this? Well,
or people bring up the flu, right? The regular flu. Hey, how many 50,000 people a year die of the regular flu? Why are we making a big deal when there's like 50 people dead, out of this?
Correct. Now, so here you go. Here's the answer. For coronavirus, the death rate is much higher than 0.02%. Now, how high is it? Let's go with the figures. Italy has, just a few days ago, actually, Italy had 1,218 people dead in 24,747 infections. That's a percentage of approximately 5%. 5%. That means if I go back to my figures, for every 10,000 people, I said 2 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
For H1N1. Now for every 10,000 people here in Italy, it's 500. 2 and 500. That's the death ratio, man. The percentages are different, really drastically different. You're looking at 2 people every 10,000, and now you're looking at 500 people every 10,000. That's just for Italy.
Yeah. And not only that,
right?
Is that it's supposedly so contagious, right?
It's very contagious. It spreads also it's very efficient. Now, New York City has 8.5 million people. If you did not put a break, if you did not stop all activity, you're looking at 500,000 people dead. If you just apply that formula to it. Now, Switzerland shows less. They're showing 1 to 2%. That's still pretty high. From 0.02 to 1 to 2%, that's still high. Now, worldwide deaths are approximately 6,000 out of 162,000 infected. Death rate is 3.7. So we are taking an average of very low, very high, and all that. You're still looking at 3.7. So out of every 1,000 people, yeah.
No, go ahead.
Out of every 1,000 people, I keep saying every 1,000 people. I think
right.
That's how we should express it, because every person knows about 1,000 people now.
Maybe do 100.
Out of every 1,000 people,
1,000 is harder to conceptualize. I think. Like I can picture 100 people. 1,000's a lot. Like 1,000
sure.
people.
Well,
really
what I mean is,
people,
throughout your life, an adult knows 1,000 people. So I'm saying you will generally hear of about 4 people dead. You personally will.
Right. When
will
you put in the
somehow
figure
know
of 100, that's a lot more then, right? I mean, not a lot more. It's less, but it's
well, it's less. Yes.
All right, but still, like, okay, I'm gonna know 4 people out of 100, right? That's a lot. You know,
Yeah,
you can start putting faces to all this, right?
Correct. Right. So, yeah. So,
right, you're like,
yeah.
oh, four. That's going to be grandma. That's going to be this old guy. That's going to be this person that has this health issue. You know, and they're all gone.
And all these people who are taking a dump on Trump right now for taking all these steps. Hey, what about the recession? You're going to cause this and God. You know, okay. Yes, he does come across as an idiot many times. He's saying all these things. He's changing his versions. But yeah, he's changing his versions because he's listening to 10 different people. He's being fluid in what he's saying, and what's the point in bashing the guy right now? What he's saying is, right now my priority is protecting people. We'll talk about the recession later. Right now I'm talking about the virus. And all these people that we're talking about, 80 plus, oh yeah, they're going to die, 70 plus, yeah, that they are at risk. Just because they're at risk, does that mean that just justifies inaction? It doesn't. Now, Ireland is, listen, man, if the Irish are closing pubs, then you have no excuse.
That's racist, Mr. Joshi.
Well, hey, listen, my Irish friends have given me permission to say, hey, whatever I want about them. And I said, hey, man, you guys are closing pubs, and they are in utter shock.
There's
so the Irish are closing pubs.
Wait. There's a Family Guy episode where something. I'm trying to remember. There's a Family Guy episode where they do like some alternative universe where there's no alcohol in Ireland. And then the Irish people end up being like the most scientifically advanced, like super people, you know.
Well, I think they're going to come out with a cure because they have nothing else to do now. They're suddenly going to come out with vaccines and all that. Listen, latest figures in Europe point at 7.1%. So that is, yeah, you don't like the 1,000 figure, but 1,000 figure is 70 people out of every 100 people. 7.1 people.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
you're right.
If you say 100,
no, I get it.
You know,
I get it.
1,000
it's easy to relate to.
Yeah.
100 people means right in your neighborhood.
Right.
In your neighborhood, you're going to see, 7 people dead? That's ridiculous.
Right. And then just dealing
with that. It could be in your family.
Right. Right. Well, that's what the information is. At least what I've been seeing, right? Because again, we've been following this for a long time, right? Like it's showing that
we have not only been following, we've been asking them to take these steps. We've been 2 weeks ahead of the curve at least. In fact, not actually 2 weeks, a month. You and me have been talking about it, and finally we said, you know what? Let's just post this. Maybe somebody's listening. This was about a month I've been saying, and you've been saying, we agreed that things should be closed down. All non-essential stuff should be. We need to err on the side of caution than cure.
One of the things that I've been seeing is that there's a lot of, the problem with a lot of information is that there's always a lot of different information, right?
Well, so that's why I'm giving you all the contrast, right? Hang on.
Yeah.
Now, let me give you the figures. Let me give you the figures, some more figures about Italy. Italy, just 1 day ago, on 3/14, okay, 3/14, that was a Saturday, they had 21,157 infected. On 3/15, within 24 hours, from 21,157, it jumped to 24,747.
I've heard.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
And the death percentage went from 6.8 to 7.3.
Right.
I've
heard. I don't know, maybe. I don't know if this is right. I've heard that their average age of infection is like 80. That Italy has the highest rate, is like the oldest population in like all the country, all of Europe or all the world or something like that.
Very good.
That their average age is 80.
Very, very good point you make. Let's talk about Spain now. Spain on 3/14 had 5,700 people infected. On 3/15, within 24 hours, from 5,700, you go to 7,753, 7,753. So that's 2,000, a jump of 2,000 people. 2,000 within 24 hours. And the deaths went from 136 dead to 288. Percentage jump, 2.3% on 314, 3.7% on 315. In America, the only thing I'm trying to say here is, I hope we don't see those figures in America at all. I hope we don't. We put a break to this. We let the weather help us out as well, and we stop the spread. We put the brakes on the spread. We slow down the spread. So another thing I do want to talk about is this whole thing they keep talking about, the flatten the curve of infections. I want to talk about that. But
right. Well,
or you have something to add?
Well, I just want you to talk about South Korea first, though, because again, I think one of the things, there's two ways of dealing with this, which is like I think you said from the beginning. Not I think you said like you said from the beginning. It's like, hey, let's exercise an abundance of caution. Let's shut down the schools because the kids aren't learning anything at school anyway, and we'll be able to halt this, right? And then kind of figure it out from there. Let's just do that.
Yeah.
So now we're kind of, I feel like in the U.S., kind of catching up to that point, and people are starting to get scared and maybe do that abundance of caution or overreaction and say, hey, you know what? Let's shut down the schools. Hey, you know what? New York, San Francisco, nobody's leaving their house. That's it. Everybody's paused now. They kind of jump from nothing to. Let's talk about that separately. But they're jumping from, nothing to extreme caution. So people are trying to, and people, they're like, so what's going on? Like, how do we deal with it? Either you shut down everything and we're going to block this off, or you kind of wait and see, right? So what about South Korea? Because I've heard much different things, different numbers from South Korea. What are those numbers and why is that so different? Because China, I don't believe anything that came out of China in terms of what the real numbers were. Like, I think they give us an idea of stuff, but I don't think anybody is really relying on what's coming out of China.
Yeah.
We're looking to South Korea, to now Europe, right? People where we can trust that they have open information and we can actually see what this thing's about. But so what about South Korea? Because I've heard, number one, that out of all their testing, that 96% of the people they test are negative, number one.
Yeah.
And number two, I've also heard that their death rate is much lower. And it's at the 2-3%, that China was reporting.
Absolutely. So there are a few things going on there. Number one, they clamped down very, very tightly on this. Way tighter than we have. Okay.
What did they do? I don't remember I just remember hearing a lot of testing, that South Korea set up the testing. They had the drive-through testing, and everybody there wears masks, and that's about it. That's all I remember. I don't know if they did like quarantines or I don't know that they did.
No, they did, and what they did is the testing is very active there, as we know. Let me check how many people they
had the issue with that church outbreak in South Korea, right? That's where they had that breakout, and I think they quarantined them, but I don't think they've got even lockdowns like now New York City and San Francisco are talking about, right? I don't think they did any of that. They're watching the quarantine people, they quarantine them, testing, a lot of testing, and that's it. And they've got they don't have an issue like Italy, looking like they have Italy or now Spain. So I'm wondering why the difference, and also, because again, like I said, you hear information, you start reading about cases, like I haven't seen, the only videos I've seen of are first from China where people have collapsed in the street, right? And then in China where they started going down, they had trucks with sanitizer spraying down the streets, right? And this was early, so they knew that this stuff lived on surfaces for a long time, right? So they're going down, spraying down the streets with all this stuff, or going into buildings and hosing them down with sanitizer. And so you've got that, and then I've been trying to understand, okay, if I can get this, what's it going to be like, So I'm reading reports of people who were infected with it on cruise ships or different places. Some of them saying that, hey, it was like a really bad flu. It was very painful. Others tested positive and didn't even know they had it. Others tested positive, had a little bit of like a very mild, like a fever overnight, and then they recovered. So it seems like it's all over the place, which is part of the problem. And I think maybe another reason why some people aren't in this country. You hear about the kids who are like at the bars, right? They're like, haha, like coronavirus, whatever. Like it's all just hype, like everything else. Oh, this is just all hype. So they're not isolating themselves, right? So part of it, right. I think, is no one knows really like what's going on.
So South Korea went from 0 to 700 to about 800 cases, okay? 0 to about 800 cases in 15 days. In about 15 days. So from February 15th to February 29th, they peaked, and then it immediately crashed.
Yeah.
What
they
is
were
that?
Like a lot of those were from that church thing, right? They had like that church that was like where all the infected people came from, right? This one little cluster.
Yep. So seems like South Korea, what they did is they did quarantine people, 100%. There's no way that they got these figures by not quarantining people. That's how they did it. They also started testing people. What does that mean? That means as soon as they tested people, they found negative, they were okay. Anytime they found a positive, they took steps to treat the person and took action on this. So
did they? They're telling the people once you're positive, like, hey, you got to go home, and that's what they were doing, right? Like, hey, you're positive, you got to go home and not talk to anybody. And in Korea, they would do that, right? They'd be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go home, and not talk to anybody, wear my mask, and behave, right? Yeah. But like in Italy, Spain, are they just? Because another issue also is, look, the death rate and all that can look way worse if you're only diagnosing the people that are really sick, right? If supposedly this infects everybody, like maybe I've got it right now, don't even know, I'm not going to the doctor, I'm not getting tested until I'm like really sick, right? So that can skew it, right? And maybe that skews it to look a lot worse than it is in Italy and in Spain versus Korea, where they've tested a lot more, it seems. Again, I don't know, that's what it seems like. They've tested a lot more. And that they're like, okay, well, actually,
this answers your question. Emergency text from the government alerting citizens of nearby cases of coronavirus infection.
That's smart.
So they inform people.
That's smart.
Transparency.
Yeah.
Number one is transparency. A government-mandated GPS tracking app. It was mandatory. You had to install it. And then the GPS tracking app designed to monitor and punish people who break quarantine. That means people were put in quarantine, maybe go home or whatever, but they were it was government mandated GPS tracking, so they were tracking people. One is transparency, so everybody knows who's got it. It's like this. In your area, in America, what do you know about your neighbors if there's an issue? What is the number one issue that everybody's informed about in America?
Mm-hmm. Nothing. You can't even find it. What? Oh, everybody wants.
No. I'm not talking about disease. There's one thing in America that you can look in your neighborhood and you will know.
The sex offenders.
Sex offenders.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what they did. They tracked. As soon as they tested, they found who it was. They said, you're the person. They have this system in place of tracking people.
Mr. Joshi, we don't want to stigmatize people who have this disease.
That is true.
They're not the disease. We don't want to stigmatize them and tell people to stay away from them or tell them to self-isolate.
That's right. We got to give them a medal, and we got to say, hey, you won. You got this infection, and go ahead. We will not track you. We don't care who you are, what your name is, what your age is, what your address is. Nothing. We don't care.
That's a big part of it, because even like in mine, when I go and look, if I try and find, right, like where are the people who are infected, right? Like in my state, okay, there's 50 people infected. I'm like, all right, what county and where? So I know like to stay away from that, right? You can't find it.
Exactly. So now in America, they do that. You know what they track in America? If you try to exercise your Second Amendment, they track everything.
Mm-hmm.
They track everything about you.
Yeah.
That's the only thing they're tracking. And they're tracking, they don't even track sex offenders. Yeah. They just
we track all your internet activity, you know. Come on, Google.
We do.
Come on, Google.
That's right.
You're helping with the website. Help us with this,
yes.
you know.
Facebook
can
Google.
do it.
Yeah, just say okay Google, and that's it.
Yeah.
So emergency text from government alerting citizens, transparency there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
right.
they are tracking people. GPS tracking app. Public governments detailing the whereabouts of every single confirmed patient.
Transparency, right? The uncomfortable side of transparency.
Exactly. You know what they told people? Everybody, where down to which theater seat they sat in, which plastic surgery clinic they visited, even where they got their lingerie.
Yep.
This is what they did. All these are part of a sweeping tracking infrastructure erected by the South Korean government to contain the largest coronavirus outbreak outside mainland China. That means, you know what that means? That means South Korea got the information quickly and they acted on it very quickly. This was war footing.
Yeah.
They stopped everything else and they did only this. So for God's sake, I know you're not very fond of him, Mr. Trump, but for God's sake, don't pick on this guy. If he's taking any action, if he's stopping travel from Europe and China and from this border and from India, which is my country, or from Canada, you can't blame this guy right now. This is not a blame game time, guys, because this is what Korea did. Here we are busy trying to find out all these ways. We as Americans have no issue with the Patriot Act. And I don't want to go off on a long rant on that, but there was no need for a Patriot Act if you just understood that you have to protect your borders and you have to compromise the freedoms of non-Americans.
Well, it's a good.
What they did is
good.
No, go ahead.
I'm just saying it's a good. What you're saying is a good point because, look, all the stuff, all the actions that we're now starting to take in terms of these lockdowns and then all the economic fallout and all that's like all this is these wartime efforts, right? So you're right. If we do like South Korea and just take the wartime effort, like I really love what our administration is doing right now in terms of how effective it is. We'll see, but what they're doing is bringing like the private sector, like, hey, we want to make sure, we're going to use Walmart parking lots. Hey guys, right, let's get all the private sector companies together.
Listen, nobody complained when they got Ford Motor Company and all these private sector companies in during wartime to make machines.
Right.
That's what BMW did for Germany, and that's what Toyota did for Japan.
Right. So the same thing needs to happen with the tech companies, right? Facebook and Google could help with this, which they should be calling the White House, or someone in the White House should be, saying, hey, you're right. That would be, look, I mean, come on. We looked at this in 10 minutes, right? Oh, that's how Korea solved it. That's why it's different than Italy, right? That's how Korea's done it. Let's do the same thing. Like Facebook already knows everywhere I've been and everything I've done, everything I've bought, combined with Google, they can track me everywhere, Like, hey, let's put that to use in a one-time, this is a national emergency, wartime situation,
this is the thing, right? South Korea tested people. They tested people first, and then they tracked the ones that were infected. They didn't just go on fucking NSA and then just track everybody under the Patriot Act and then say, okay, because you know what happens then? You have so much data, you have no data.
Yeah, that's true. No, that's a good point, right?
Because what the Bush government did and what the Obama government did is they gave up domestic freedoms to secure freedoms for outsiders. And then you have none. Because let me explain what happened. With the Patriot Act, you are mass surveilling everybody in the United States and even the world. You're just collecting everything. Now, you're also saying we cannot compromise the rights and freedoms of the people who want to come here. Okay. And then what happens is, so that's why you just compromise the freedom here. You start treating Americans as criminals. You try to walk into a court, you have to go through this metal detector, people asking you questions. You have to leave your cell phone in your car. You cannot wear a metal buckle on your belt. You can't wear things when you're entering a courthouse. This is a public office. You cannot enter government buildings. Everything government suddenly starts treating you like the outsider. They're all public servants. But you compromised your rights because of some illusion that you're going to give some rights to others who are coming here. However, my question is, so once they come here, you are compromising their rights, right? Because now they become Americans with no rights, with no privacy, and with no freedoms. Then what is the point? There is no point to this. The point is there is no point to this. This is a vicious circle. So, yes, abolish the Patriot Act, but use tracking where it's necessary. Again, there has to be a sunset to every government action.
Yeah, and that's step two, right? Step one, right, is bottom line. We could say, hey, make it very clear, like, here's where the people have been, who have been confirmed cases. This is the city where they live. Here's where they've been. If you've been here too, you should, keep an eye out, or maybe just go ahead and quarantine if you were here, between X hours.
So when the White House and Google say we're going to bring in 1,000 engineers, Google's going to bring in 1,000 engineers, do it. Guess what they're doing? Trump, in his own layman language, said they're going to develop a website to answer questions, who needs testing and all that. Guess what that is? That's exactly the South Korean model.
Yeah, you're right.
That's what they're going to do. You're going to enter your name. You're going to enter your address. You're going to tell the location. You're going to tell your symptoms. They're going to say, yes, you need a test. And guess what? Then they know you need a test. And they're going to ask you what happened with the test. Or they're going to say, all right, you go get a test. And once you take the test.
Not up yet. Yeah.
Exactly. Once you get the test, they are informed whether you came positive or negative, and then they're going to track you.
Yeah, you're right. Great. But
the problem is, you know what the problem is? They're not telling you this. And I wish they told you.
Right. Yeah. The messaging, 100%.
But the genius.
There needs to be better messaging.
But hang on. The genius of your question is it exposed it. You asking me that question made me think about it in these few milliseconds, and that's my answer.
Right.
So that's the genius of your question. You always have the best questions, man. I've always told you that.
Well, dude, that's why we have this.
Your questions are more important than the answers I can give. No, seriously.
Well, no, it's good, right? Because we talk. I love doing this too because you talk through it, and there's all this fear and there's panic, and then there's this like negativity and all these people taking these cheap shots. None of that's helpful, and it's good to think through this stuff. And one of the things that I've personally seen that this administration handles situations very well. They've done a good job. So I try and even though when I'm myself, I get concerned. People get highly concerned and you start panicking. You want to blame people and stuff. It's sometimes it's good to be like, you know what? Hey, look, they've proven their mettle so far. They've got a good. Let's see. And one thing that I have noticed is, hey, when I've been patient, I'm like, oh, they actually are doing a good job. The testing thing, everyone's crying, right? Testing. We don't have testing, right? All these other countries have testing. We don't have testing. What are we going to do? There's no testing.
They now have shipped the kits. Let me explain what happened with the kits.
Well, look, remember though, in the press conferences that came out, they explained it. And there was a new lady in the press conferences. I don't remember her position. She helped explain it though, that like what they had to do is that we didn't have a system set up for this type of, for even production of this type of stuff. They had to go and be like, okay, how are we going to do this? Let's get together with the labs and the companies that can do it. Right. You have to build that machine, which a lot of people don't understand. This is now the U.S. government has become like a product launching company,
Yeah.
you know, which you
Yeah.
don't do in 10 seconds.
No, we don't, and we shouldn't. We shouldn't. And
Right.
you know what? They finally have the test. In fact, the first test that they sent, they were not entirely faulty tests. What they had, I can explain. And I'm sure people want to know what happened there.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
then let's finish this point. I think Google and the government are trying to follow the South Korean model. The question you
you're
asked, again,
I hope
question.
you're right.
They're going to
hope you're
track people. They're going to do this. However, there's one thing I want the government to be transparent about, that it's going to have a sunset. This following of people is going to end on a certain date, or on that date we'll have another conference and we'll tell you how far we have extended it. There has to be a sunset. It cannot be another Patriot Act.
Yeah,
The
you're right. Let's hope.
The Patriot
Let's
Act
hope.
needs to be
Yeah.
abolished.
Yeah.
It needs to go away.
Let's hope, and I believe that, you know, I hope and believe that, you know, again, given the character of this administration, I believe that would be the case. But we all know
well, yes,
that
because they have advisors. Thankfully,
right.
they have advisors like Rand Paul, and Rand Paul being the libertarian,
Right.
he does have the proper view about this, a proper view. Not the Democrats, not the Republicans, but Rand Paul has the proper view. I don't understand why that guy is not in the forefront of American politics. I still don't understand that.
Well, he's in the Senate.
And plus, he's a doctor. He's a doctor's son. He himself is he's a dentist or a doctor. His father's an MD. He's a doctor. These people know what they're doing, and they should be on the forefront doing all this. I understand Trump wants his vice president, but guess what? I think Rand Paul would have been a better fit, or maybe his father, Ron Paul.
And for all we know, he may be, right? We don't know what happens, and that's what a lot of people forget too. We only see what we see, you know, and everyone's like, well, nothing's happening. We don't know who they're talking to. We don't know what's going on.
That's right.
You know,
that's right. But see, so that's what it is. I think that's what they're doing. But the testing is number one, and great Walmart, and immediately people have jumped on this. They're saying now Walmart, Target, and all these big corporations are now planning to make money off these things. You know what, guys? If they're providing these tests on their parking lots, and we don't know how much they're investing in doing this, there's a security that has to go through the parking lot. There are logistics to be worked out. Of course, they're going to make some money. You don't want to pay them? That's fine. Do your own tests. You cannot. They have a system. There are many Walmarts in this country, hundreds or maybe thousands. I don't know. Targets and Walmarts, between them, we have thousands. If these people are saying we will do it,
Walmart's
do it.
Remember, all Walmart's already famous for leaving its parking lots open for people who want to camp there. You know, like they're already they do that already.
Well, not all of them, but I think half of them have stopped now. There's somehow, and not because Walmart wanted to do it. I think it's two-pronged. Local governments like New York governments and local counties who are very intrusive have taken those rights away. No nighttime parking, no this parking, no that parking, no freedom of movement. And they've taken, and Walmart does not want to get in between those squabbles, I think, and that's why they've stopped it. But there are many Walmarts, you're right, Cracker Barrel, Walmart, and all these parking lots, they still do allow campers overnight. I'm sure, a lot of people avail of these services, so I appreciate that, and I hope it reverses completely and it becomes open once again to everybody. But going back to this, Walmart, yes, you're right. They are used to doing this for providing services. They also have a pharmacy department within their stores. I think they're poised very well to do this. Yeah. So is Target. Target has CVS or a pharmacy inside it. So they are good as well. They're poised to do this. It's excellent. They have the logistics. So people should appreciate this. Instead of that, they want to appreciate the car salesman, your Joe Biden, your favorite boy. This guy is a bumbling idiot. He's a fool, and he's a car salesman. That's what he is. I repeat that. He's saying, I'm going to bring experts. I'm going to make them sit in the situation room. Then in the situation room, we're going to talk about this, and then they're going to leave the situation room. I'm going to make sure they wash their hands when they go to the potty in the situation room. Dude, have you heard of cell phones and telephones? You don't need everybody in the situation room.
Every time I see him, did you watch
the situation,
debate?
man? He has a situation of his own.
Did you watch the
sorry
debate?
to say that. Yeah, the debate. Yeah, the two guys. That's what he was.
I didn't know. We gotta do a
God.
separate show on that because I need to watch it. Let's do a separate show on it.
You clearly have.
Every time I see.
Yeah.
Every time I see that
clearly
guy,
you had better things to
answer.
do, and you know, I don't fault you for that. And better things means you probably had to tie your shoelaces or take the dog for a walk. Those are definitely more important than listening to these fools. Unfortunately, it was evening. I wasn't wearing shoes, and I don't have a dog at present. So I'm just, you know, I don't have a life. So I was watching these guys.
I try. Well, you try to stay, you know, tuned in, and I try to. Sometimes I can't even stand it. They're so bad. Sometimes, like the last few where they had a lot of candidates still, they were entertaining, I thought, because they were fighting, so it was fun. This one I wondered, because it's only those two guys, there's no crowd, and you're right, every time I see any interview with Joe Biden and he's asked a question, particularly in the debates, I'm always shocked at how, bumbling is the perfect word, and like he's just coming up with an answer like an actor or something, just coming up with some crazy answer that's like an answer to the question.
He does have an answer. So
he
does have an answer. Out of the 30 seconds, he has a 10-second answer, which is the canned answer. It comes in a can, and he pops the can, and then comes out the answer. But what he also opens is a can of worms along with that can. And then the remainder of those 20 seconds, the 30 seconds, you have a can of worms. Yeah. That's his problem. And Sanders, dude, that guy just promises everything that he cannot deliver.
Right. Yeah.
So under contract law, this guy is misleading people. He's a fraud. I call him a con man because he knows he cannot deliver on any of those. It's not a mistake. It's a fraud on the American people. That's why I call him a fraud and a con man. That's Sanders. Yeah. The first guy is a fraud. Everybody knows he's a fraud, but for some reason he has decided to run, and that's your only choice. So these are your choices on the Democrat side. And Tulsi Gabbard, she's saying, hey, I'm in the race. At least give me a chance to come for the debate. Even if I don't win any more delegates. Yeah, bring her in. She's
that would
woman.
Be cool, right? Yeah, like
woman
she's
color.
still there, right? She's the only one who has to quit.
She's a literate
Let's have some
young
fun, right?
person who served this country, continues to serve, is from Hawaii. She's not stupid. Why don't you get her? What's the problem with that? She's too smart for you? She's too quick?
Well, you know, they got to set. You know, we can't have anybody who says, "Oh, I'm going to run for president," and put them all on the stage, right? That's what they're saying. But I mean, I get it; those are the rules and how you got to run that stuff. But hey, why not?
Yeah, but you know what?
Put her in.
You know what though? Everybody else dropped out from that stage.
That's what I mean, right? Everyone's dropped out anyway. Just throw it in. Let's have some fun. No one else is in.
She's still running.
Mix it up. Yep.
And she's still running. And she's a representative. She's legit. She's not completely just some bum off the streets of whatever city you want to put in the name there. Albany or whatever. Or San Francisco or Chicago or Maryland. What's the place in Maryland?
Baltimore.
She's not that. She's a member of, she's a House representative from Hawaii. Duly elected member of the House, and she has some ideas, but they're scared of that opposing ideas. So now you have a socialist guy who's not really even social. He doesn't know what he is. Let's be honest. He's running even on the socialist agenda, but he's not socialist either. If he wants to deliver what he's promising, he'll have to convert to become a dictator. That's the only way out. But going back to this response of South Korea, I think that's what they want to follow. They have the tests out. They do have the test kits out.
Right.
Each kit is a box which can test about 700 to 800 specimens, which means 700 to 800 people. Or if you're taking double specimens, sometimes some things go wrong. But anyway, 700 to 800 specimens.
What are the kits?
And these kits have been shipped out.
What type of kit is it? Is this the one where they got to put it in your nose and in the back of your throat?
Just a swab, yes. So it'll either be the nasal swab or back of the throat. I think they'll ask for the symptoms. Hey, do you have a cold? Then sure, let's take that. Do you have a sore throat? Then they'll probably just wipe down your tonsils a little bit, and boom, gag reflex, and then you put it in the little container and send it up. The first kits were not bad kits. They were just confusing. What they had is, now it seems coronavirus, COVID-9, has two different strain mutations.
Right.
So it had a
three-part.
Right. So it was a three-part test. The first two were for COVID-9, and the third was.
Now you're talking about the original from CDC that they had to recall because it was no good,
recalled.
Right? The one
that they recalled.
The one that they called it's part art and science to be able to read this test. That's what I've heard. It was said that, hey, this is both art and science to be able to read this test.
Right. So this is what it was. The first test that has been now recalled was not faulty as such, but it had three prongs. The first two prongs were for COVID-9. Right, for the current one, and the third prong was for H1N1, H1N1 or some other virus.
Wait, COVID-19. COVID-19.
Sorry, COVID-19.
Right.
Sorry, COVID-19 and H1N1. Right. So the first two, if they came positive, or the first came positive, it was a positive. But the third is what was throwing people off. So that was what CDC thought was the better way to test people, to check if they could rule out something else. What they were trying to say is,
smart.
Hey,
yeah,
it is smart. It is smart, and that's why I wanted to talk about it to you. It is probably smart because now they're saying it's not only are you negative for this, but the symptoms that you're experiencing are because of this. So you have an answer. But doctor, why am I feeling this? Because of this, buddy.
Smart.
There you go.
Smart, man.
But it created some confusion. They took it back. Now the test kits that are coming out are only targeted for COVID-19, and that's it. You see the point? And they have already shipped out thousands of these, and each of those kits can take about 700 specimens. So we have ample. The rollout is going to happen. It is happening. But until then, to flatten the curve, stay in, people. Stay in. And on the note of stay in, the kids are staying home, yes, but people are still not being allowed to work from home. Many government agencies, too, are dragging their feet. I can talk from experience in New York State. I don't know about other states. And what that is doing is people are still out, and they're not going to flatten the curve if they start getting infection. And I'm going to explain that very, very much in detail, because I think people need to understand why that is important.
Let's talk about these
very important
first, though. Hold on, let's go back, because you explained that quickly, but I want to talk about that for a minute, because the tests, like you said, that first, I didn't know that, and I think that's good to know. That first test tested not just for COVID-19, but also, so it was also for H1N1.
Yes.
That's really interesting. Interesting that they would test for H1N1, number one. Number two, very interesting and very smart, I think, to be like, hey, let's make sure this isn't something else also, right? If we can get it all in one test. That's very smart. I kind of wish that was the test that we were going to keep doing, because that's, what if it's something else, right? There's too much going on too quickly and all this panic where, like, hey, let's flag. If there's something else being flagged, and we can. Now, again, that may be a logistical issue where it might create a lot of, extra. There may not be the bandwidth to be able to test for something else also. I don't know how the testing works. But that's really interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah,
so the third prong was coming out inconclusive, and that was throwing people off. So
it wasn't that the tests were faulty, it's that.
Well, we don't know that, whether they were throwing, that's what I've heard, that it was throwing people off, and it could have been faulty or not. That I don't know. Maybe it was faulty, or people who were reading it thought it was faulty, and there's not much discussion on that. So that's why they recalled that. They said, you know what, that's okay. We'll just send you the brand new ones, which are just going to be for COVID 2019 or 19, whatever they call it. So that's what it was. So there was nothing wrong with it. China still is not sending us any test kits. It seems some Chinese billionaire who decided to donate 1 million tests. However, it's from China, and maybe Trump is going to be wary about those.
Oh, I would be worried 100%, right? Like, number one, of course,
because
they
it's
didn't
nothing
give
against the billionaire.
Yeah, like, come on, man. Jack Ma, Alibaba, whatever, man. You know what? Like, too late, we've got it. If you wanted to send us tests in the first place, there's a reason we didn't get tests, from China.
And the thing is, I'm not taking the credit away from that guy. My only issue with it is he did not create those. It came from Chinese labs. So he cannot say, oh, yeah, these are guaranteed great. The trust is already broken.
Yeah, which is fine, whatever. It's just, again, this is something we've talked about. The Chinese government, right, the one-party CCP system is going all in on the propaganda and on the PR strategy here. Did you see the videos about people singing like the Chinese anthem in Italy or something like that, saying "Thank you, China"? Because China's out there like giving test kits, trying to enlarge their sphere of influence, right, and their goodwill image now in Europe, where they're going to say, "Oh, we saved you, we helped you with the COVID-19, right?" And build some goodwill during this crisis. Go get some points. Go get some fans. China.
Because you're interested about those inconclusive results, and I don't want to make this sound like an opinion, because I'm trying not to be opinion.
Well, you can have your
as far as
this
the
show,
data is concerned. Yes. So the Association of Public Health Laboratories told us more specifically that a negative control, which should not have reacted to any of the primer and probe sets, was coming back positive for the third set, which was the test for all SARS-like coronaviruses. So that means...
So it was an advanced test is what it was. It was
it was a broad SARS-like and acute respiratory syndrome. And
this is SARS-2 is what this is.
It is.
This is
exactly.
This is SARS-2.
So they were trying to give you this awesome thing, just like, you know what, man? Made in the USA, that's what it is. Yeah. It's awesome. It's just that, people are not prepared for it. It's like this. You buy tools made in USA, like old Craftsman tools, man. Mm-hmm. I have these from the past 8-10 years. I use them for everything. The 3/4 ratchet and the 1/4-inch ratchet.
And you use them, not like other people. They don't just sit there. You use them.
No, not 3/4. Sorry, 3/8. 3/8 and 1/2 inch. 3/8 and 1/4 inch. Dude, I use them a lot. Not like regular people. Not somebody who just has it in the trunk. No. I use these a lot. I've done timing belts with these kits. People laugh at me. You did a timing belt with that crap? I'm like, yeah, it's made in USA, man. It's still better than a bigger, larger set made in China or India. So this is a made in USA test. That's what they try to do. I think CDC was ahead of the curve, and sometimes too smart is not good enough. Is not good for people. That's okay.
That's
okay.
Right, because it was comprehensive. That means there's more moving parts. I mean, it's not as fast. So you don't sit there and blame the administration or CDC without knowing exactly why and what happened, and the media will not talk about it. You're right, and it's difficult not to, because that's all the information you get, and you're like, wow, the CDC they screwed up the whole testing thing. We don't have any tests, and everybody's panicking, right? And we're all gonna die, and look at everybody screwed everything up. We don't know what we're doing. Oh, by the way, this is actually what happened. Here's the information, people.
Right.
I'm very glad you spent the time to research that and let everybody
you know why I
this.
sent it? I'll tell you the reason. It's the same bottom line. You asked me that question when we had a separate talk the last time. You said, hey, man, what happened to those kids? What's happening with China? What's going on with all these kids?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know what? Chase is going to ask me again. And you're going to slap me across my face. So maybe I should just have the answers ready.
Well, perfect. Awesome, man. Good. Yeah,
And
again,
something
good comment.
answers befitting another a fellow American citizen, because all Americans are smart people. They want smart answers. They want logical, reasonable answers. That's what it is, and that's what I'm trying to do here. I have no affiliations with any party. Any party. My affiliations are with Americans. Period.
Well, this is another example of why the attitude, and we talked about this the last episode.
Yes.
Where like I complained that in public school we're kind of taught this self-loathing type of religion, right, on how to be an American and stuff like that, and it breeds insecurity, right, and it doesn't make you confident. And one of the things, I think I said this too, is that I also appreciate about President Trump, particularly in the State of the Union address that he had, that he gave, was that everything was positive, like objectively positive, whatever you want to argue about the facts, argue, but it was objectively positive, It was pleasant.
Yeah. It was positive. He awarded many people and people you may like, people you may dislike, but it's not that person that you like or dislike. It's that moment. This is what we did. I know a lot of people did not like Rush Limbaugh getting I have no affiliation with the man, but you know what? A lot of people in America listen to that man, and I'm sure if we really dig deep, we'll come across some people we know and like who listen to him. So I'm not going to disgrace the people I like in my personal life just because they like him, and therefore I'm not going to disgrace that act that the president carried out by awarding him a medal.
Well,
he may be wrong on many issues, and he was wrong on many issues, right? He was wrong on many issues, talking about cigarettes and not cigarettes, secondhand smoke does not cause this and all that. But you know what? I'm very sorry. I'm not celebrating that, but it's unfortunate, very, very unfortunate that he's come down with lung cancer now. He says he used to say only smokes cigars, does not inhale, but the smoke is in that room. But guess what? He's getting that smoke.
Well, like that was the controversy. I understand why some people they're like, hey, that was pretty controversial. I think it was, but I also I step back. I'm like, hey, you know what? Like, I think this is just a separate issue. I think he could get away with that just because of the opposition media that he's had to deal with. Be like, hey, here's a guy from my media. Here you go. We're gonna award him.
Right. Let me say this. Let me say this.
Move.
If you have broad enough an audience, there are very few things in this world that will not be controversial. You will have some member of the audience.
It all depends on what people want to do.
Who will find something controversial. There's always something controversial.
Yeah. Look, what I meant by the positivity thing is what I like.
Yeah.
Going back to that, what I appreciate about what President Trump has done, and is again not the positivity. The State of the Union I take as an example. Positivity, but that one thing that he said is that I think the end of the speech, and speeches are just speeches, right? But this is how he does things based on, it's kind of based around the ideas in that speech. One of the things he said, and I've heard him say before, is that basically America can do whatever, the best is yet to come. And that's a very powerful, I believe, message, an important attitude to have. Like, to not have insecurity and to panic and to have this self-loathing attitude where, hey, we do everything wrong in America and everybody does everything else. Everybody else does it right and we don't. Like, that's just, that's nonsense. It's the opposite.
That's nonsense.
And if you have that mentality, it changes things, Like, hey, actually,
it's
no.
Not.
Right.
It's absolutely untrue. And that's
Right.
coming from somebody who was born and brought up and lived most of his life in another country. I can tell you from experience, this is absolutely untrue. This country is great. The people are great here. And my experience here as an outsider, as a person who you may call as a person of minority, my experience has been nothing but positive. People have gone out of their way to help me, support me, encourage me, educate me, direct me when I've asked, and opposed me and still been my friends, contradicted me and still been my friends, challenged me and still been nice to me. That's my experience in this country. And people may call it anecdotal, but the vast number of people I come across that kind of defeats the anecdotal claim that some people may have about my personal experience. I've traveled all the way from Albany to Buffalo, from Clinton County to Long Island for court. You name it, I've been to that court. I've driven to that court in person, met with judges, clerks, police officers, clients, other people, co-defendants, maybe other people in court, people, when I stopped there, people at pizza places, and you name it, I've done it. And I've also traveled south, different states in the south, and nothing but positive. So, sorry, man. I mean, I'm talking from a point of view of very widely traveled man. And I come from across the globe. It doesn't get wider than that.
Right.
Any father, you go from night into day, back into night, you know? So, yeah. So yeah, man.
Like,
the self-loathing. You bring a beautiful point up. You're right, you know, and I'm glad you're taking that opportunity to highlight that point. And I appreciate. I've learned a lot from you as well. And like I said, your questions are awesome. I mean, they really bring out this good conversation. I really enjoyed because of that.
Well, I think it's important, especially during times of, you know, of war like this, right? These emergency situations, people panic. That's how it goes. You know, no one knows what's happening. You know, the stock market's crashing. We got this disease. We don't know what's going on. Blah blah blah. It's it's important, not just in these times. You know, in panic times, to stay positive. But again, that, like I said, that the idea that in terms of America, the best is yet to come, right? There's this idea that, well, we've had, you know, America was cool, we had this run, but we're going to, just like the Roman Empire, we're going to collapse, and it's going to be, and, you know, we've had a good 300 years, and that's all we get, you know? The idea that, no, you know, like, we're just hitting our stride, the best is yet to come. If you know, you have that attitude, that's medicine, whereas right now, you know, everywhere you go, anywhere on TV, the opposite is happening. Where you get poisoned. Everyone's being poisoned with this idea, this negativity. You know, just stupid, taking cheap shots. You have like these reporters, you know, who ask these weird questions during, you know, it's like, imagine you get to be the reporter and ask important questions, and you're just bringing up like cheap shots from stupid shit, instead of you know, asking important questions about the virus, or what are we going to do, or when's, you know, what's the details of the website that you're working on with Google, right? Yeah. Something we're talking about.
To your point, another of your boys, what's his name? He's from my country, Fareed Zakaria. You know what his headline for his episode was? Coronavirus is bringing the worst out of Trump.
Right, like
really?
That's right. That's how you're going to spend your time.
Dude?
That's how you're going to spend your energy.
That's your take on this? Instead of educating people and using your segment, you are a famous person. You get those minutes, 30 minutes or 1 hour, or whatever you get, on a major show. The world is watching you, and you are pointing fingers at a president of the United States.
It's poison.
It's bringing the worst out of this president. What do you mean by the worst? And then he started saying about what's happening at the border situation, how he's blocking people. Dude, and you know what? That's exactly what Europe is doing now. All European countries are doing that. That's exactly what everybody is doing. It has nothing to do with the outsiders. It has everything to do with vectors. All human beings at this point are vectors. They're vectors. And it's not like the plague where, it's a very sad story about the plague, right? In 1635 or 1640, first in London where millions died, and worldwide in Europe people died, like millions died. The bubonic plague and then some part the pneumonic plague. And people thought dogs and cats were causing this. And they slaughtered tens of thousands of dogs. And when I say dogs, also puppies. This is because they didn't know. So they took the wrong step. Did not stop the plague. In fact, they did not know what was killing them for another 300 years or 250 years. It came every 10, 20 years, killed people, and it left. It came, killed, and left. Until the very end, they found out it's because of those fleas from infected rats. But here, that's not the case. We're not killing dogs and cats. We know who the vectors are. We're not killing any people. We're only stopping them until this is over. So him pointing fingers at Trump for this, that's not the worst. You know what Trump said when somebody asked him about the economy and recession? He says, yeah, it may happen, but right now we are more concerned about the virus. That's something, man. That's coming from a person who you have branded as a cold-hearted businessman and a person with no emotions and no empathy and no nothing. He's looking out for people. And and then you may say, and then these arguments, I'm going to transition now very beautifully. Look at the segue now. These arguments that it only affects old people. It's only killing old people. Trump is looking out for those old people because on the debate, Biden and Sanders, they couldn't outclass each other as to who loves old people more and who wants Social Security to be expanded more. They love old people. But here the argument is, it's only affecting old people. Right. Sanders went on to say that Biden is lying about his opposition to Social Security. It seems Biden was to cut back on Social Security. And Sanders, as we know, he wants Social Security starting at age 7. Anybody who's old, like 7 years or 8 years old, boom, you're Social Security qualified. So they couldn't contain themselves. But here Trump is actually working for these people who are old. Because have you heard of this word triage?
Right.
Okay.
Talking a lot.
Triage is used in the medical field to determine how to discriminate between patients. Now, discrimination might come off.
Most people are going to say triage. Most people will pronounce that triage. Yeah.
Sure, they say triage. I like triage. It just sounds.
Right. I'm sure that's the proper way to pronounce it.
Right, that's the right way to say it as well. And if it's not, from henceforth, it is. It's triage. Okay, so triage is what the medical community follows. They discriminate against patients based on treatment. It's nothing bad, but yes, as soon as we use the word discrimination, it has a negative connotation. Let me add to the negative connotation. They actually discriminate people based on color. Ooh, and now you're saying, what? Mr. Joshi, this is not right. Oh, yeah, except the colors are different. They go from red, orange, yellow, blue, and green, those kind of colors. Red means, boom, we got to see the patient in 0 minutes. We got to see him right away. 0 minutes. The next one is, I think, 10 minutes, or the next is 20 minutes, and then is like 60 minutes or 120, and then 240. Those are the minutes. So that means 0 means if you don't see the patient right away, patient's gone. And in a triage, one of the things that are considered are, can the patient recover without any medical treatment? And he's just in pain, but it's going to go away. Number 2, is the patient not going to recover regardless of how much treatment we give him? And the third, is the patient in bad shape but will recover because of medical treatment, but will not recover if we do not give that treatment. Guess who you're going for first? You're going for first who needs treatment and is going to recover. And in a triage, the old people and people who are vulnerable in such situations, not a regular day, but when coronavirus hits us, when the curve is very sharp, very high, these people are going to be allowed to die. Just like Italy said. Italy has actually said that if it gets overwhelmed, people above 80, we will not, unfortunately, be able to treat them. They will be just led to die. Trump doesn't want that. And I think he is not going to explain it in these words. And I'm not a spokesperson for Trump. I'm just a spokesperson for what the government is doing right now. They're doing it right. And he's trying to avoid that triage where all these people who work. And why is it important for us to protect our old? Because two things, right? Because there are people. They're your father, your grandmother, my father. We care about these people because we care about everybody. Mm-hmm. And number two is they deserve it. They put their money. They raised us. They raised this generation and 2 generations. And these people went through wars. These people paid into Social Security. And now is their time to reap a little bit of that benefit. They have nothing left in life. They have very little of life itself left.
Yeah,
so the least we can do is actually take care of them.
Yeah, I thought that was a fantastic sentiment, which it should just come naturally, but it's something that, again, it was pointed out. I think it was pointed out again by that newer lady who's been in the press conferences, and I got to find out what exactly her role is. But she made that point that, like, hey, now it's our turn to take care of the greatest generation. You're right. Like, these are the people, these are the people who, like, went through the World War II time, like all this stuff, know, and now they're the most
America
vulnerable.
is alive because these people are alive. They survived those wars. They fought for you. They put in the money in Social Security. They cannot be triaged. They cannot be code blue or green, whatever the lowest is. They are our code red, and this president is trying to keep this and this curve flat. And I've been advocating to keep this curve flat, and that's why, guys, stay at home. The economy will bounce back. And who's the greatest person to have to bounce back this economy anyway? This guy. He got you to the top. Everybody's retirements were up just like 3 months ago. If everybody withdrew, they would be millionaires right now. Okay, it has tanked, but he has the formula. He knows how to make this work. It'll come up. It will come up. It has to. America still is the strongest economy, whether you like it or not. It is. If something has to bounce back, this is the crazy ball. This crazy ball always bounces back.
Good analogy. Good visualization also, right?
Yes.
This and you throw America. It, and the harder you throw it, the harder you throw
back,
it, right?
the harder it bounces. Yes.
Yeah. Well, the
so
sooner, right?
The
sooner, the better. I mean, you're right. If this is, and I bet you that's the case that we talked about. That if we're getting right, the testing machine is building. We're getting the testing rolling out. We're getting that website, right? The website by Google, right? You're exactly that was in his language, right? The website by Google.
In his language, it's a website. It's actually an app. It's a very intrusive app. It's gonna take your IP address. It's gonna do everything. It's gonna log everything. It's going to get you, and it's going to track you, and they're going to cure you or kill you or whatever they have to do.
Yeah, right.
My only problem with that, put a sunset clause on everything. Another thing I would suggest, before I forget that train of thought, if any of the information is misused, have a criminal penalty built in the same law. Whoever misuses this information, sells this information outside, should not only not benefit from it, but will face serious consequences. Make it a felony. Make it a felony, not a misdemeanor, because it is a felony.
We'll see. You know how that happens, right? Wartime always.
Well, that's what I mean. You got to give it the right fangs. You got to put the checks and balances right away. So there is no challenge. There's no room for challenging it. Make it right.
Well, that's
It's
all
very
dependent on,
easy to
right,
put a clause for felony. Let some heads roll, and that would be right. Another thing about working from home, and I don't want to forget this point either. Now that we're talking about websites and internet, when people start working from home, we're talking about wide area networks. We're talking about WAN access, maybe VPNs and all that. Guess what? You are going to make all these networks vulnerable to Chinese attacks, to Indian hacker attacks, to Russian hacker attacks, to African, Nigerian prince attacks, and all those kind of things. You know what the government needs to put in place is, if these things happen, block off the internet to those domains, not permanently, but for 6 months or 1 year. Have a probationary period. Just block them off. Block off the internet. Tell the government, listen, man, if you're going to hack into our networks, we are actually going to sever connection to you.
Well, you're right. We had that with HHS. It was today, right?
Yeah.
I don't know the details
exactly.
of it, but yeah.
And this is my suggestion. Just like I suggested 2 weeks ago, we need quarantining or whatever, school shutdown, college shutdown. This is what I'm suggesting right now.
Right.
This is the next wave of attack that's going to come from the outside.
Right.
And
we're
it's not going to take rise
right.
like coronavirus, but it's going to attack us in a different way.
That is a good and very valid idea. It's borders, right? Borders are healthy. We're seeing that the borders are healthy.
Yes.
They're necessary.
And nobody's talking about this. You know why? They're not even thinking about it. That's why.
Yeah.
So here we go. We are pioneering that suggestion as well. Do that. Put that in action. Have Twitter, Google, tell them, hey, listen, if you start seeing those attacks, block them. That's it for 6 months or 1 year. Have a sunset. I believe in sunset clause against even our enemies.
Everything should have right to have a sunset
Everything
clause.
should have it,
Right.
because we are not greater than anybody.
Who had that? Somebody in particular in government had that. They talked about that a lot, about having sunset clause. Maybe it was Rand Paul. It might have been having sunset clauses.
It could
on,
be.
like,
it could
everything, like, hey, by default,
and if it is,
everything should have a sunset clause.
If it is credit to him,
Yeah.
but I'm not. There's no plagiarism here. This is obviously a lot of people who consider liberty as the most important thing in life. I'm going to say this. So it's not me. It's not an original idea. It's from the founders. Have a sunset clause for everything. Don't have all these absolutes. There's no fucking absolute in life. Life is not absolute. So none of this can be absolute. But yeah, that's what we need to protect. We need to stop internet traffic. We can just block it. Because you know why? These are the very governments, that are named who actually practice internet
actively, all the time.
Yes.
They're always
they practice the censorship themselves.
Yeah.
So there's no problem in censoring them. They know how.
That too. You're right. Yeah, you're right too. Right. No problem censoring anybody. Right. We don't do it to take advantage of the openness. Those are the countries that are also actively, consistently launching attacks. Right. Searching for vulnerabilities, stealing the Equifax information. Right.
They have the capability. They have infiltrated. The system, because guess what? Weren't we investigating the president himself for having been infiltrated by the Russians? So there you go.
That's true.
So on one hand you say this, on the other hand you don't want to take any action. This is the time to take action. Block all these people completely.
Right.
You can sever these ties. They're physical cables if it really comes down to it.
Where's all the woke influencers saying this, right?
Woke influencers, if they were really so woke, they would be out there as volunteers. All these groups. What's that group that used to come out and attack people and, all those people? All these woke groups. Where are all these people?
Oh, right. No, that's what I.
Yeah, even the names are not coming to us. You know why? Because they're not here. They're not helping in any of these things. Now it's Walmart and all these corporations that you just blamed. The top 1% is out here helping you because they have the capability, they have the capital, they have the machinery to do it.
Yeah.
There you go. That's your answer.
Right.
You know, if socialism was going to help, Italy would be fine. There would be one case and cured.
Yeah, I very much appreciate that method of operation that they're following, where like, hey, let's get together, right? All the big players, all of our great private industry partners, right? And let's figure this out, because right, we have not the opposite, which usually happens, like, hey, it's a panic. Hey guys, we're taking over, right? We're going to tell you what to do, right? And like, we've got the solution. We're going to tell you what to do.
Yeah, don't blame those guys. Don't blame those guys. We can have a segment on if you're really so, you know, Sanders and Biden and all these people who keep bashing the 1%ers. If you really felt that great, you would close out all those tax breaks, right? Shut off all the tax breaks and then actually drop the tax rate on the middle class. You never want to reduce this rate. You want to increase the rate on everybody. I've never seen any rollbacks from these people.
Yeah. Well,
these are scammers, man. These are scammers, you know. But anyways, I mean, today, right now, maybe is not the right.
I want to talk about. I want to do another episode where we talk about the economy and all this stuff, and it's a good segue from Biden and Sanders. But we'll do another episode because I think that's the other part of all this coronavirus stuff that's going to be very, very important.
But I wanted to get this whole internet protections with the sunset clause in as a
that's
suggestion.
Important, yeah.
If somebody,
the sunset clause, those are separate issues, but the sunset clause is important, number one. But number two, maybe number one, the sunset clause, I don't know, but it's important. But I think it's very important, you're right, to consider that and think about that. And something that, frankly, should be discussed a lot more, because like you said, these are all nation states that are consistently attacking us. I mean, look, we just had the Equifax thing where, hey, it was the Chinese military, right? They're the ones who did it. And what did we do about that? Did we do anything about that?
Yeah, nothing. Hey,
so here we are.
India, there are many call centers in India that call people, they're crank calling people, right, for internet marketing and all this. You know, collectively, they're wasting millions and millions of hours of Americans. 300 million Americans, and these people collectively we are spending minutes taking calls, avoiding calls because of these telemarketers and all that. These people are constantly attacking us. These are the countries. These are the countries that censor the internet, control the internet internally, and they are embarking on all this. So there's absolute justification in blocking these people off if they're going to take advantage of our vulnerabilities. Yeah. They can call all-out war on Americans right now because we are vulnerable. And these are the people who kick people when they're down. These are exactly the countries that do that. And maybe not so much as India, because that's the country that's been invaded by people. It never goes out and invades people. That's different. But the people in there, some of the people out there, they are hacking into American life, right? Stealing our time. So I have no qualms about just blocking those people. And China, of course, is an operator. It's a global operator. Mm-hmm. But here we are spending our time surveilling Americans through the Patriot Act. That Patriot Act should be canned.
Yeah. Right. Sunset clause and everything, right?
Yeah. I mean, more on that later, the privacy. And, you know, this whole, and we shouldn't be going to the judiciary to decide whether it should be canned or not. The judiciary is going to give you two answers, one yes or no. It's not the right answer.
Right.
It's what they think, the 9 people. We are depending too much on the judiciary for all our rights. The Second Amendment, everybody wants to go to a Supreme Court, and no, guys, this shouldn't have happened in the first place. These things are clear. These enumerated rights are clear.
Yep.
Like that guy in North Carolina said, put the blame at the feet of the people who it belongs to.
Oh, Mark Robinson.
Don't blame us, the law-abiding citizens. Yeah, that black guy.
Yeah. We're going to have a whole other episode on that. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk about Mark Robinson. I want to talk about, I like that a lot about, considering that blocking out these countries, especially right
Yeah.
now in terms of vulnerability and, wartime emergencies like this, right? Like, hey,
Yeah.
we don't need to be dealing with people trying to hack into, our systems while we're doing this. But this
exactly.
is all. These are all.
Exactly.
These are all things. These are all things that are supposed to come from the legislature, though. And which is
They are.
Here's a whole other episode where that's the thing. the way the legislature works / does not work is an issue unto itself.
It is.
So maybe we'll end there and talk about that. Make that a whole other episode.
Definitely. But I just wanted to run with all these figures, put that in contrast, why H1N1 and COVID-19, completely different animals. COVID-19 is deadly. It's deadly. It spreads fast. So guys, please do not conflate absolute numbers over a year and just within 2-3 weeks. Do not correlate. Don't try to mix up and mislead people. Don't put them in some kind of false lull and relaxation. That's not right. It's like CDC saying, some expert on Joe Rogan say, oh yeah, the masks don't work. Really, the masks don't work at all, buddy? Oh no, then, well, if you're sick, then maybe the mask will work if you, and slow down the spread. Exactly my point. The masks do work. Right now, we don't know who's sick. No, but we don't want a shortage of masks. Yeah, but at least don't spread wrong information. Don't put out some information and then go back, contradict yourself, or kind of supplant your statement within the next 15 seconds. Hey, listen, guys, if you have masks, if you feel comfortable wearing them, wear them. No harm in them. Because when people cough, a mask reduces the velocity of the droplet infection, right? That's what it does. It's a barrier.
Right, something. Something's better than nothing.
It's something. Of course it's something. Right now they say 6 feet. What happens if you're within 3 feet? That mask is going to reduce that distance. You'll be safer up to, instead of 6 feet, maybe up to 3 feet. I'm not saying get close to people, but an accidental brush, somebody coughs and they cough in their own mask, the velocity is reduced. It's going to help. If you're in a slightly crowded place, of course you should wear masks. The South Koreans, now that you're bringing up that example, they're all wearing masks as well. So don't spread this. This is what the problem is. Suddenly, if somebody's so-called and not so-called, he's an expert, I understand. He's on Joe Rogan. Of course, he's like State of Michigan, some guy. He's a high up there researcher. Yeah, but listen, man, if you do not know exactly what the mask does and doesn't do, then say, I don't know. Don't say one thing and then say, oh yeah, if you're infected, then it will slow it down. Yeah, then somebody did a study and they found out it didn't do anything. Yeah, really? People, when they use a spray can to paint, the spray can says, wear a mask. 3M makes masks for that. Okay, so when you use a grinder and there's rust flying around, wear a mask. Wear eye protection. The eye protection doesn't do 100% protection, but it does 99%, 90%, 70%, 20%. Anything is better than 0%. That's what my message is. If you have the masks, use them. I'm not saying there should be panic buying. People, how many masks do you need, guys? One mask is okay for a week, I guess. Use it. And not those surgical masks. The other masks, they're like paper masks, and they have an aluminum strip for the nose. And why it feels better is when you put it on, you press the aluminum strip, and it kind of contours along your nose, and it kind of seals it. It's a simple mask. It's paper. It's like a coffee filter, just very thick. And it's got the aluminum strip on it, and it's got 2 rubber bands. One goes on your neck first, and the other one goes over your ears. That's it. Nothing great about it. It's called N95. You know why? Because it stops 95% of pollutants. Simple as that. N95. That's it. No advanced Einstein degrees or Newtonian physics required in understanding all that. It's all simple. But if you have it, use it. If you feel comfortable, use it. You feel uncomfortable using it, don't use it. It's okay. But I don't want them to say it's ineffective. Don't say that. It reduces the velocity. It does. So don't discourage people just like, because what happens is then everybody says, I look like a fool, I'm wearing it. Don't do that.
Right. Yeah.
This is what happens.
Part of the culture, like, hey, why not?
Yes, it's already not part of the culture, and now you're saying, it's not if everybody, and one person wears it, everyone's staring at the person. If you say, if you have it, use it, it's going to reduce some droplet infection, whatever, people are going to say, all right, I'm going to do it. Yeah. So these are the like you said, they're not used, it's not in the culture. These are social taboos, right? It's a social
right,
in America.
Things can be, this is what I mean, everyone has a role to play, and like,
yes.
This is
and
where
he had this opportunity,
social,
and he gave wrong information, and then he tried to correct himself by saying everybody's infected, but right now, anybody who's infected, we don't know who's infected. We have not tested people. So they're probably spreading it too. That's another way to flatten this curve. And then he said, well, maybe everybody will get it. It'll be good. You know what he's talking about? He's talking about mass immunity. He comes from that school of thought, mass immunity. He doesn't understand the triage effect. Before you get to mass immunity, you get a lot of deaths. America and American president right now is not ready for that. He doesn't give a fuck about immunity. He doesn't give a two hoots about the economy today. He'll think about it tomorrow. Right now, he wants to save all the lives possible, especially the old who fought wars for all these people, and because of whom we can sit here and have this podcast.
Yeah. It makes it a more difficult.
You can never forget the sacrifices, man.
You're right. It makes the engineering of all this more difficult, but you're right. That's the only way to do it. If you want to protect the more vulnerable, you have to. Yeah. It's a bit more difficult of a problem, and that's just how it is.
Right.
Because it would be easy, to let everybody get it, herd immunity. It's going to take out who it's going to take out, and that's it. You know. But that's not
you know
our
what?
approach.
You know what? What would be a really a great herd immunity? Everybody take off your clothes in the winter and go out. Everybody go live in the forest. Don't live in homes. Everybody gets soaked in the rain every day. That is great herd immunity. You'll be as strong as a bear, and only those who are strong as bears will. You know what? Human beings do not live that way.
Right. No, you're right. You're right.
We have succeeded not because of our immunities, but because of our brains to overcome all our shortcomings, physicalities, shortcomings in our physical self.
We've got the what I want to talk about, and again, let's not talk about it because I want to talk about it in a different episode. But part of that, part of engineering the proper response to this whole situation, a big part of it is the economic consideration, and that's within.
And we will talk about it the next time.
Talk about that. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, and definitely. Of course, we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah. But okay.
All right.
So let's end this one.
Do you think we've covered enough ground today, and that's good to maybe we meet again?
Yeah, I think we're good. I think we could end this episode here and sign off, and we'll on to the next one. I think this was really good. A lot of good information there, buddy, and I think hopefully it's helpful to somebody.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, exactly. Even one person benefits from this. That's the idea. It's nothing great. It's most of it is, it's out there. I'm just compiling some information and trying to make it less of an opinion. And certain things, of course, are going to be an opinion, but they're all educated opinions. But the facts of how and what is happening in the world vis-a-vis America in this situation, I just wanted to bring that to the forefront. And and thanks for your directing this, this conversation, because everything I spoke about is basically based on the last conversation you and me had, and you had all these questions. So I presented these facts based on that. So thanks to you.
Well, good, man. No, thanks. Yeah, thanks again. And so on to the next episode tomorrow.
All right, buddy. Chase.
All right.
Until then.
All right, buddy. Take care.
All right, bud. Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.